Part of the Model United Nations Theory and Practice class of fall of 18, we will be acting as two separate regional voting blocks with two working papers. The working papers are collaborated goals of each block on issues of global climate change. Once the meeting is called to order, the nations and their delegates will be accounted for and the speakers list will be opened. Each nation and their delegates will be allocated a specific amount of time to make their case. Once all nations have addressed their issues, we will move on to presenting the working papers and voting to create a resolution. The meeting is now called to order at 11:07. Now my co-chair will introduce the topic of discussion.
The topic introduction, and after topic is introduced, countries, once your country is called, please stay present and voting. The implementation of education on climate change through institutions that target the future generations will help enact action against the cause of global warming. I will now go into roll call. So once your country is called, please say present and voting.
Present.
France,
Present voting.
India,
Present.
the state of Japan,
Present voting.
the People's Republic of China.
Present and voting.
Thank you.
With that, we meet quorum at 4. The chair will now entertain any motions to set the topic for debate. Delegate from China.
The People's Republic of China moves to set the topic of debate to global climate change.
There is a motion on the floor to set the topic of debate to global climate change. Is there a second?
India will second.
With the second, the topic of debate is set to global climate change. The chair will entertain any other motions on the floor. Seeing that there are not any, the chair will now entertain a motion to open speakers list for 9 minutes with 2 minutes speaking time.
Japan will motion to open the speakers list with a 2-minute speaking time.
There's a motion on the floor to open the speakers list for 9 minutes with 2 minutes speaking time.
France will
Delegate
second.
from France.
France will second.
With that, we now open the speakers list. So on the speakers list, China, India, the People's Republic of China, France, and Japan. Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and good evening, fellow delegates. For many years, climate change has become a global headache for all nations, and with the help of the significant efforts made by the United Nations, with most recently the Paris Climate Agreement, it is within cooperation is where true changes will start. However, the effects of climate change continues on even more rapidly, and it is indeed Mother Nature's way of warning us that it is hurting, and even more so, our children will be hurting if we do not act faster to combat climate change. With this, the People's Republic of China would like to call upon other nations once again to cooperate with us in strengthening climate actions to help reduce carbon emissions that contribute to pollution and work towards a low carbon future by negotiating and educating power corporations in order to encourage their transition to producing cleaner energy. Along with corporations, we as a nation cannot express enough of how important climate change education is for the younger generation and the public. Climate literacy must be taught and emphasized in schools across nations, and nations must create climate change awareness programs for the public to join to practice actions to help reduce climate change. To create a better future starts with unity to encourage and educate our people and the power sectors to understand, to contribute, and to be more aware of the effects of climate change. The People's Republic of China looks forward to working with member states who share similar values. Thank you. China would like to yield the rest of the time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Thank you, fellow delegates. In regards to climate change,
It has become an area of high politics, engaging the whole world at an international and diplomatic level. India has a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities. Every highly developed country in history, France, Japan, have gone where it is in an unsustainable way, by cutting down trees and pumping carbon into the atmosphere. If the developing world today does the same thing, this could lead to disaster. And the impacts of climate change would hit the people of India harder than almost anywhere, in large part due to our people being largely exposed to natural hazards. As our Prime Minister Narendra Modi stated, the choices that we make today will define our collective future. The choices may not be easy, but through awareness, technology, and a genuine global partnership, I am sure that we can make the right choices. I would like to yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from India. The chair will now entertain any motions on the floor. Delegate from China.
The People's Republic of China motion for a moderated caucus of 5 minutes with 1 minute and 30 seconds speaking time to discuss the actions taken to combat climate change.
There is a motion on the floor for a moderated caucus of 5 minutes with 1 minute and 30 seconds speaking time to discuss the actions taken to combat climate change. Is there a second?
France seconds the motion.
Thank you, France. Any other motions? Delegate from India.
India motions for a moderated caucus of 5 minutes with 1 minute speaking time to discuss the actions taken to combat climate change.
There's another motion on the floor for a moderated caucus of 5 minutes with 1 minute speaking time to discuss the actions taken to combat climate change. Is there a second?
China seconds the motion.
Thank you, Delegate from China. We will now vote on the motions in the order it was received. So for the first, we will vote for yes for a 5 minute moderated caucus with 1 minute and 30 seconds speaking time. Say aye, and if you disagree, say nay. France.
Aye.
India. The state of Japan.
Nay.
The People's Republic of China.
Nay.
With that, the vote is 1, 2, 3. This motion fails. The next, we will now enter a vote on the second motion for a moderated caucus of 5 minutes with 1 minute speaking time. Aye is for yes, nay is for no. France.
Aye.
India.
Aye.
The state of Japan.
Aye.
The People's Republic of China.
Aye.
With that, the motion passes unanimously. We will now move to a moderated caucus of 5 minutes with 1 minute speaking time to discuss actions taken to combat global climate change. India, would you like to speak first or last?
We would like to speak first.
Delegate from India, you have the floor.
Developed nations, thank you, Honorable Chair, sorry. Developed nations around the world have already contributed to more than 60% of greenhouse gases emissions since the Industrial Revolution. Now developing nations are contributing. India's energy policies have evolved in the past 50 years, so much so that over 30% of our total utility power comes from renewable resources. In 2016, India ratified the Paris Agreement, in which we plan to reduce the carbon intensity of the economy by 33 to 35% by 2030. The Paris Agreement confirms the importance of education, training, awareness raising, and the fight against climate change. I would like to yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from India. Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, fellow delegates, and good morning. The task of lowering CO2 emissions before the proposed date of 2030 is challenging for China, being a mostly coal-dependent state. The People's Republic of China realizes that it is the largest contributor of greenhouse gases and will show full support towards climate change. The People's Republic of China would like to spread awareness by developing further clean energy initiatives in the future. China would eventually like to implement a comprehensive climate change curriculum to educate the youth on this global crisis before the age of 12. Of course, we realize that our critical point with the issue is to scale down CO2 causing production by incentivizing our corporations. China is optimistic that our fellow sovereign nations will come to a common consensus for the greater good of the planet. The People's Republic of China yields the remaining time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from China. Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and good morning, fellow delegates. The People's Republic of China would like to acknowledge that according to scientific data, the planet's average surface temperature has risen about 1.62 degrees Fahrenheit since the late 19th century, a change driven largely by increased carbon dioxide and other human-made emissions into the atmosphere. Most of the warming occurred in the past 35 years. If we continue to emit as many or more greenhouse gases, this will cause far more warming. Although there is a certain amount of global warming that we're going to have because of our activities during the past century, there are many ways to slow the rate of warming. Therefore, we encourage all the nations of this assembly to stop ignoring the issue, start making real changes, and improve the current actions taken so far. It's late, but not too late. Thank you. I would like to yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from China. Delegate from India.
India motions to end debate and go back to the speakers list.
There is a motion on the floor to end debate and return to speakers list. Is there a second?
China seconds the motion.
Thank you, Delegate from China. We will now return back to the speakers list. Japan, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and delegates. Climate change is a threat to every country, not just developing countries, from shifting weather patterns that threaten food production to rising sea levels that increase the risk of catastrophic flooding. The impacts of climate change are global in scope and unprecedented in scale. Japan has been involved in multiple negotiations of climate change, the most recent being the Paris Agreement in 2015. The Japanese Society of Education for Sustainable Development fosters academic research and debate on education for sustainable development in close exchange with practitioners. Japan would like to create more programs with the Japanese Society of Education for Sustainable Development to educate entire societies globally. Japan yields its remaining time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from Japan. Delegate from India.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. India has recognized the threat of global climate change and as far back as 1986 has created a national policy on education, further emphasizing the environmental education of the civilians. The Supreme Court of India made environmental education compulsory in 1991 and discussed a new directive in 2003 highlighting the need for it to be mainstreamed in all nations. The 2005 National Curriculum Framework was a landmark policy as it sought to reorient education and make it more relevant to the students' lives. It situated the teaching, learning process and the social-cultural in a social-cultural and global context. We feel that these policies should be copied and implemented in other nations as well. India yields the rest of its time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from India. Delegate from France.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. France has made climate change a national priority since 2001, and France firmly believes that every country should invest more into education about climate change in the school system to encourage the next generation to be more environmental friendly. Also, France wishes that every country, regardless of economic status, comply with the Paris Climate Agreement and reach the levels of CO2 emissions by the year 2030. France yields the rest of the time to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate from France. The chair will now entertain any motions on the floor. Delegate from France.
France motions for a moderated caucus of 6 minutes with 1 minute speaking time on the topic of controlling coal output.
There's a motion on the floor for a moderated caucus of 6 minutes with 1 minute speaking time on the topic of controlling coal output. Is there a second?
India seconds.
Thank you, Delegate from India. With the motion passed, France, would you like to speak first or last?
France would like to speak last.
Okay. Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. China would like to respond to France's question regarding the controlling of coal output. We are aware that we are one of the largest contributors to the world's coal output. However, we have been implementing policies in most sectors, specifically within the power sector. The most significant policy is our commitment to limit coal use and to increase the share of non-fossil fuels in primary energy to around 20% by 2030. And as stated by my fellow delegate from China, to cut our carbon intensity by about 40% by 2020. We would also like to point out that we are transitioning to hydropower, as it is now our major renewables energy source. With that being said, the importance of corporations in converting into renewable energy comes into play in the conversation of climate change, as it does help reduce carbon emissions. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from China. Delegate from Japan.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. In regards to controlling coal output, this is an area that Japan needs to work on. We've at least opened 8 new coal power plants in the past 2 years, and it plans for an additional 36. There's a national energy plan in which coal will provide 26% of Japan's electricity in 2030, and it abandoned a previous goal of slashing coal's share to 10%. This reversal is a result of the 2011 disaster at the Fukushima nuclear power station. Power industry officials believe they can limit emissions by building clean coal plants and systems for capturing carbon. It is very costly to make these plants, but they are 45% effective compared to the 30% or 35% for conventional plants. Japan needs to invest in renewable power in order to meet its pledge to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 26%.
Thank you, Delegate from Japan. Your time has ended. Delegate from India.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. India recognizes that its coal output is currently a concern for its national economy and environment. It is expected to raise to 1,076 million tons by the years 2022 and 2023 from the last fiscal year of 826 million tons. We do recognize, though, that with the implementations of solar panels, there has been slight drops in the coal output and usage, and we hope by investments coming into the country, we will be able to continue to see the dropping rates of coal usage. India yields the rest of its time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from India. Delegate from France.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The French President Emmanuel Macron has pledged to shut all of France's coal-fired powered plants by 2021. This is an important economic benefit of innovation, as it brings a huge advantage in terms of attractiveness and competitiveness. France only produces 1% of its energy from coal fired stations, but this commitment is a signal that we as a nation of France are committed to lead on climate issues and urge other nations to do as well. France would like to yield the rest of the time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from France. Delegate from Japan.
Japan motions to return to the speakers list.
There is a motion on the floor to return to speakers list. Is there a second?
China seconds the motion.
Thank you, Delegate from China. With the motion passed, we will now return back to speakers list. The Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. As the People's Republic of China, we're aware that we are one of the biggest polluters. China's coal consumption appears to be rising at a rapid rate in 2018. The growth rate in 2018 has been the highest since 2011. As the People's Republic of China, we're implementing different action plans to reduce our coal consumption dependence. We're currently working plans with corporations that cause a lot of pollution to incentivize them to move to more renewable forms of energy use, as my delegate already described. Thank you. I would like to yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from China. Delegate from India.
The India would like to say that it's up to the global community to make sure that we take care of the problem of climate change, because though India has fought really hard to change climate in our own country, it's only been because of the help of the other members of the UN. And so it's important that we continue this path and continue receiving help and giving help when you can give it and when it needs to be given, because we can only make a difference if we work together. Sometimes it is the most impoverished countries that suffer the most from climate change, and so we need to make a community effort to get us back on track and get the world a greener place. I would like to yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from Japan. Delegate from France.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. The nation of France has took initiatives and have called for action to begin a coalition of countries to combat climate change. With France not being the biggest producer of gas or oil, nor being a big consumer of it, they have sent a message to the world that something must be done. France has supported the need for climate change since 2001, when the government passed the law making climate change a national law. The government also in 2004 passed the first climate change to stabilizing greenhouse gas that was set up by Kyoto Protocol. France has been concerned with the rising global temperature and the need for global action. Not just France, but France proposes to begin resolving climate change issues by implementing the importance of climate education into the education curriculums for all countries, teaching the youth on how to take responsible action, start of programs at school, and exposing the youth to the dangers of climate change if action does not occur. France would like to yield the rest of its time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from France. Are there any other motions of the floor? Seeing none, at this time the chair will entertain a motion to close the speakers list.
The People's Republic of China moves to close the speakers list.
Delegates, please raise your placards so we can see them. Delegate from China.
The People's Republic of China moves to close the speakers list.
There's a motion on the floor to close the speakers list. Is there a second?
Japan will second.
Thank you, Delegate from Japan. The speakers list is now closed. My co-chair will now present working paper number 1.
Working paper number 1, General Assembly simulation. Working paper number 1, General Assembly simulation. Sponsors China, signatories India, Japan, and France. The implementation of climate change action through financial incentives for corporations. The General Assembly relevant resolutions, helping to speed up the process of sovereign nations' climate change action by educating their top energy corporation of rising greenhouse gases. Having considered the cost of specific corporations switching to cleaner energy, appreciating highly the effort of industrial nations to offer incentives to said corporations. Concerned about the rising sea levels, global temperature increase, ice sheet depletion, and unpredictable weather patterns. Reaffirming the commitment to peaking CO2 emissions by 2030 as it pertains to the Paris Climate Agreement. 1. Suggests subsidizing industrializing nations to ease the burden of transitioning to clean energy. 2. Endorses the continued and strengthened education of the public around the issue of climate change. 3. Urges the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the International Monetary Fund to work closely together on this issue to ensure that resources are allocated efficiently and ethically. 4. Also requests that the International Monetary Fund defers the interest on loans received by industrializing nations for 25 years. And 5. Encourages the Special Climate Change Fund to collaborate with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to create and fund comprehensive climate change platforms to educate the energy industrial sector.
At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to open a moderated discussion on working paper number 1 for 7 minutes with 1 minute speaking times. Delegate from India.
India will move for a moderate discussion for 7 minutes with 1 minute speaking time.
There's a motion on the floor for a moderated discussion for 7 minutes with 1 minute speaking time. Is there a second? Delegate from Japan.
Japan would like to second.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate from France.
France questions the working paper's connection to the education aspect of the thesis, and how does it pertain to education?
Thank you, Delegate from France. Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Education and educating our corporations is of paramount importance. With the help of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, in conjunction with the Special Climate Change Fund, the People's Republic of China suggests creating comprehensive engineering and energy utilities programs to educate corporations on adaptation and technology transfer. Corporate transportation and shipping impact can be lowered and addressed via annual sponsored presentations and follow-ups. It would also be important to educate corporations dealing with agriculture and forestry on safe and low-impact practices in production and maintenance. Furthermore, assisting developing nations that are economically dependent on production via fossil fuels harmful to the planet will be a crucial undertaking to pursue. China yields the remaining time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from China. Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and fellow delegates. Money is materialistic, but makes Mother Nature go round. The People's Republic of China would like to encourage this committee to approve funds to address climate change before the effects are catastrophic and irreversible. If we act now, global sea levels will reduce by 10 centimeters by the year 2100. Coral reefs will survive, and most importantly, the risk of droughts, food shortage, floods will be prevented. I encourage this committee to approve these funds and save Mother Earth. Thank you. I yield my rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from China. Delegate from India.
India recognizes that its focus in past years has been on educating society about the issues of climate change, but has felt that in order to continue its progress, that it needs to focus on the industry in its nation, namely by instilling subsidies to help these industries creating harmful pollution. We will be able to curb the carbon emissions and coal usage for energy. We recognize also that in industry building countries, especially current industrializing nations, carbon emissions have been rising through the roof, and we need to we need to subsidize these nations so that they can make a change both efficiently and economically beneficially as well. And he yields the rest of his time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from India. Is there any further discussion regarding working paper number 1? Seeing none, with no further discussion, the chair now moves to working paper number 2.
Working paper number 2. General Assembly sponsors Japan, signatories France, China, India. The implementation of climate change action through educating civil society. The General Assembly relevant resolutions emphasizing to sovereign nations about climate change solution by educating primarily the youth and then society. Emphasizing the importance of creating learning resources to educate everyone on sustainable living. Recalling the emergence of the Japanese Education for Sustainable Development (ESD) movement that led to the initiation of the UN Decade of ESD from 2005 to 2014. Noting with deep concern heat waves, heavy downpours, decreased water availability, and melting ice caps due to climate change. Fulfilling the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement of limiting global average temperature increased to 1.5 Celsius above pre-industrial levels to reduce the risks and impacts of climate change. 1. Urges all nations to participate in educating for sustainable development. 2. Requests the United Nations Environment Program to create educational programs that teach others how to teach classes about sustainable living. 3. Also requests that the International Monetary Fund creates a yearly budget specifically for climate change education. 4. Recommends implementing climate change curriculum at all schools levels globally. And 5. Strongly condemns any nations that does not participate on educating society on climate change and sustainable development. 6. Encourages the United Nations Environment Program to take an initiative and influence other organizations to educate societies on the dangers of climate change and how to live sustainably.
At this time, the chair will now entertain any motions on the floor. Delegate from India.
India motions to amend operative clause number 5 in working paper number 2 to add and/or corporations after educating society.
There is a motion on the floor to amend operative clause number 5 and working paper number 2 to add and/or corporations after educating society. So it would read, strongly condemns any nation that does not participate in educating society and/or corporations on climate change and sustainable development. Is there a second on this motion?
China seconds the motion.
Thank you, China. Is there any discussion? Delegate from China.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. China would like to point out that we strongly agree with, by the statement of India, to add the importance of education towards corporations in order for these corporations to understand the impacts of climate change and the potential alternative resources to cleaner energy, because it allows the corporations to move towards a solution that will establish the transition to cleaner energy. Thank you. I yield the rest of my time to the chair.
Thank you, Delegate from China. Is there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. Are there any other motions on the floor? Seeing none, at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to vote on working paper number 1. Delegate from France.
France moves to vote on working paper number 1.
There is a motion to vote on working paper number 1. Is there a second? Japan.
Japan will second.
With that, we move to a roll call vote on working paper number 1. Aye is yes to adopt. Nay is no to not adopt. France.
Aye.
India.
Aye.
The State of Japan.
Nay.
The People's Republic of China.
Aye.
With that, the vote is 3-1. Ayes have it. The working paper passes to resolution. At this time, the chair will entertain a motion to vote on working paper number 2. Delegate from Japan.
The state of Japan will motion to will motion to vote on working paper number 2.
There's a motion to vote on working paper number 2. Is there a second?
India seconds.
Thank you, Delegate from India. With that, we go into another roll call vote for working paper number 2. Ayes mean yes to adopt. Nay means no to not adopt. France.
Aye.
India.
Aye.
The State of Japan.
Aye.
The People's Republic of China.
Nay.
With that, the ayes have it 3-1. The working paper passes and becomes resolution number 2. Delegates, at this time, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting. Delegate from France.
France moves to end debate.
There's a motion to end debate. Is there a second?
India will second.
The meeting is now adjourned at 11:40. Thank you, delegates.